Have you ever wondered why, no matter how hard you try, you keep slipping back into the same old habits? You try, you fight, you make progress, and yet, there you are again, relapsing, feeling like you're back at square one. What if I told you that there's one emotion you might not even realize is sabotaging your progress and keeping you stuck in that cycle? It's not about a lack of willpower or not trying hard enough. It's something much deeper, and it's been quietly controlling your behavior all along. In this video, we're going to uncover this hidden emotion that's keeping you from breaking free. By the end, you'll understand why you've been relapsing and how, with just a shift in your emotional awareness, you can break the cycle for good. Stay with me, because once you understand this one thing, everything changes. Let's dive in. It's easy to assume that relapse is just about a lack of willpower. People often think, if I just try harder, if I just want it more, I'll be able to stay on track. But what if I told you that it's not about willpower at all? What if the real issue is something much deeper? Something that many of us don't even notice because we're too busy focusing on external factors. The truth is, relapse often happens because of an emotion we're not properly understanding. And it's this emotion that triggers us to seek the comfort of our old habits. Think about the times you've relapsed. Maybe you slipped up during a period of stress, or perhaps it was during a quiet moment when you felt alone or disconnected. It's easy to blame yourself, to think that you just lacked the strength to avoid the urge. But what's really happening in those moments is far more complex than that. Emotions, particularly certain suppressed or unrecognized emotions, are at the heart of relapse. And if we don't understand this one emotion, we're going to keep falling into the same patterns again and again. So what is this emotion? It's shame. Yes, you heard that right. Shame is the hidden driver behind many of our relapses. Now I know that might sound strange. You might be thinking, I don't feel ashamed. But it's not about the obvious shame you might feel when you do something wrong. This is the kind of shame that's deeper, more subtle. It's the feeling that you're not enough, that you don't measure up, that you're inherently flawed in some way. This type of shame often goes unrecognized because it's buried deep beneath the surface. But it's the one emotion that has the power to trigger self-sabotaging behaviors. Shame isn't something we usually want to acknowledge. It's uncomfortable. It's painful. So, what do we do with it? We avoid it. And the most common way we avoid feeling shame is by turning to something that can make us feel better in the short term, whether it's a substance, a behavior, or even a fleeting moment of distraction. When we feel shame, we instinctively want to escape it. And in that moment, the comfort of old habits feels like the perfect solution. But here's the catch. These quick fixes don't address the shame. They just mask it temporarily. They give us a fleeting sense of relief. But the underlying shame remains. And as soon as we experience it again, we relapse. It's important to realize that shame is different from guilt. Guilt comes from something we've done. It's the feeling of having made a mistake or done something wrong. But shame, on the other hand, is tied to who we are. It's the belief that we are fundamentally flawed, that we are not worthy of success, happiness, or love. And when we're constantly carrying that feeling of shame, it's easy to turn to our old behaviors for comfort. After all, it's much easier to slip into old habits than to confront the painful belief that we are not enough. Now, you might be wondering, how does this all tie into relapse? Here's the thing. Relapse is often the result of trying to deal with emotions like shame in unhealthy ways. When you feel like you're failing, when you believe you're not good enough, you start to doubt yourself and your ability to succeed. It becomes much easier to justify returning to those habits that once gave you comfort. You may tell yourself, I'll try again tomorrow, or it doesn't matter now, and just give in. The cycle repeats, and each time it does, that underlying emotion, shame, gets reinforced, making it even harder to break free. But why does shame have such a strong pull? The answer lies in how we are wired emotionally. Our brains are designed to seek relief from pain, and emotional pain can feel just as intense as physical pain. When we experience shame, it triggers a deep, visceral response in our bodies. It feels uncomfortable, and our instinct is to find something, anything, that will help us escape that feeling. The problem is, the things we turn to for relief are usually unhealthy, reinforcing our sense of shame and perpetuating the cycle of self-sabotage. The more we give in to these coping mechanisms, the more ingrained they become, making it harder and harder to resist them. The first step in breaking this cycle is understanding that the real issue isn't your willpower or your actions, it's your emotional state. Shame drives many of our self-destructive behaviors, but once you recognize it, you can start to challenge it. You can begin to develop healthier ways to cope with your emotions and build the emotional resilience needed to resist the urge to relapse. Let's break this down a little further. Imagine that you've had a rough day. Maybe you faced a setback in your recovery, or something in your life triggered feelings of inadequacy or failure. These feelings stir up shame, and in response, you seek out comfort in an old habit. You tell yourself, just this once, it won't hurt. But in reality, this quick relief only reinforces the belief that you're not good enough, that you can't manage without your old habits. The next time something triggers that same shame, it's even harder to resist, because you've conditioned your brain to respond to shame with self-sabotage. But here's the most important part. Once you understand that shame is driving the cycle, you can start to shift the way you deal with it. Instead of using unhealthy coping mechanisms to numb the feeling, you can begin to face it head-on. This doesn't mean ignoring it or pretending it's not there. It means acknowledging that shame is a part of your emotional landscape, but it doesn't define you. It means choosing to confront those feelings, instead of hiding from them, using tools like self-compassion, mindfulness, or seeking professional support to break the cycle. Think about it this way. When you feel shame, you have two choices. You can either continue to use old habits to numb the pain, or you can choose to face it, process it, and release it. The more you practice confronting and healing from shame, the less power it will have over you. And the less power shame has, the less likely you are to relapse. The key to breaking free from relapse is not fighting against yourself, but understanding what's happening emotionally. Once you recognize the role shame plays in your behaviors, you can take steps to heal that emotion, replacing old coping mechanisms with healthier ways of managing your feelings. This is the path to lasting change. And while it may be difficult at first, each step you take toward healing and self-compassion builds a foundation that's stronger than the urge to relapse. If there's one emotion quietly shaping your behavior more than almost any other, it's shame. And the most dangerous part? You usually don't even realize it's there. Unlike fear, which is loud and obvious, or anger, which demands attention, shame hides in silence. It disguises itself as thoughts like "I'm not good enough," "I don't deserve better," or "Why do I always mess things up?" These thoughts don't scream at you, they whisper. They blend into your self-talk, into the background noise of your mind. And before you know it, they start dictating how you live, how you respond to stress, and why you keep relapsing, even when you want so badly to change. Shame is not just another emotion, it's a core belief about your identity. It tells you that something is wrong with you, not just with what you did, and that distinction matters. When you make a mistake and feel guilty, your mind says, "I did something wrong." But shame twists it further. It says, "I am something wrong." That one emotional shift is enough to sabotage even the strongest efforts at self-improvement. Because no matter how hard you try to change your behavior, if deep down you believe you're broken, you'll unconsciously return to the version of yourself that matches that identity. Let's talk about how that shows up in relapse. Imagine someone who's been clean for a few weeks, maybe even a few months. They've been doing well, following routines, setting goals, avoiding triggers. But then something happens. Maybe it's a small failure at work, a relationship conflict, or even just a quiet moment where loneliness creeps in. That's when shame makes its move. It resurfaces as a memory, a self-judgment, a mental replay of everything that's ever gone wrong. And it doesn't show up screaming, it just whispers, "See, you haven't changed, you're still the same screw-up. This was never going to last." In that moment, relapse becomes less about temptation and more about identity. The old behavior, whatever it is, becomes a way to return to something familiar. Not because it's good, but because it matches how you already feel about yourself. You're not reaching for the habit because it feels great. You're reaching for it because part of you believes that's what you deserve. And that's the trap. Shame doesn't just make you feel bad, it makes you believe you don't deserve to feel good, at least not for long. Here's where things get even more complex. Every time you relapse, the shame grows. You feel worse about yourself, which makes it even harder to believe you can change. It becomes a cycle. You feel shame, so you relapse. Then you feel shame about relapsing, which makes you more likely to do it again. It's like a loop that feeds itself, and unless you understand what's really driving it, you'll keep looking for solutions in all the wrong places. Discipline, motivation, external accountability when the real issue is internal. What makes shame especially dangerous is that it thrives in secrecy. It needs isolation. It needs silence. The more you hide your struggles, the stronger shame becomes. That's why people often isolate after a relapse. They don't want anyone to know, not because they don't care, but because the shame is so intense it feels unbearable to expose. But here's the paradox. The more you isolate, the more power shame has, and the more power shame has, the harder it is to reach out for help. Let's say someone relapses and feels ashamed. What's the first instinct? Pull back. Cancel plans. Avoid eye contact. Skip meetings. Lie about how things are going. That withdrawal is a natural reaction to shame, but it reinforces the belief that they're alone, that no one would understand, and that they're too far gone. And when someone starts to believe that, it becomes nearly impossible to move forward. Not because they don't want to, but because they feel they're not worthy of doing so. Now let's take a different example. Imagine someone who understands that shame is what's fueling the urge. They still relapse, but this time, instead of spiraling into isolation, they say to themselves, "Okay, I messed up, but this doesn't mean I'm worthless. This doesn't mean I'm broken. It means I need support, not punishment." That one shift changes everything. It opens the door to recovery instead of closing it. It creates room for growth instead of guilt. And that mindset is what creates long-term change, not fear, not shame, not punishment. The hard truth is this: most people never deal with shame because it feels too big to face, but ignoring it only gives it more power. If you never acknowledge that shame is driving your actions, it will continue to control you from the shadows. You'll keep trying to fix your behavior, while the deeper emotional wound remains untouched. It's like treating symptoms without addressing the root cause. You might get short-term results, but the pattern will always return. So how do you face shame? You start by noticing it. Pay attention to the moments when you feel like you're not enough. When you beat yourself up, when you think things like, "I'll never change," or "I don't deserve a second chance." Those aren't facts. They're stories shame is telling you. Once you start recognizing those stories, you can begin to challenge them. You can ask, where did this come from? Is this really true, or is it something I started believing a long time ago? And then, most importantly, you speak it, you share it, with someone you trust, with a support group, with a therapist, with a journal, if nothing else. Because the moment you put words to your shame, it starts to lose its grip. Shame cannot survive exposure. It can't grow in the light. And once you expose it, once you stop hiding, you'll find that it's not nearly as powerful as it felt when it was buried. There's nothing weak about feeling shame. It means you care. It means you're human. But what you do with that shame, that's what determines your future. If you let it keep you stuck in silence, you'll stay in the cycle. But if you learn to recognize it, speak it, and challenge it, you can start to write a new story. One that's not based on who you were, but on who you're becoming. Shame has an incredible way of pulling you into a cycle of self-sabotage, a cycle that feels almost impossible to break once you're stuck in it. And it's not because you're not trying, it's not because you don't want to change. The truth is, shame thrives on your fear of being found out, on your fear that if people truly knew the real you, they'd reject you, or at the very least, they wouldn't see you the same way. So what does shame do? It whispers. It tells you that you're not good enough, that you can't succeed, that you don't deserve better. It's the voice in your head that says, "You'll never change, so why even try?" The problem with this voice is that it becomes so ingrained that it becomes part of your identity. It doesn't just sound like a distant fleeting thought anymore. It becomes your narrative. "I am broken," you start to believe. And when you identify with the emotion of shame as part of who you are, any attempt to break free from old habits feels like you're fighting against your very identity. You can put all your energy into resisting a temptation, but if deep down you believe you're unworthy of success or happiness, those efforts will start to feel meaningless. The cycle of self-sabotage starts when you begin to feel shame about something. Maybe it's a mistake, a slip-up, or just the weight of not living up to your own standards. You don't know how to deal with the emotional pain of that shame, so you reach for something that has worked in the past to make you feel better. You might go back to an old habit, something that offers immediate relief, even if it's not healthy. In the short term it works. The feeling of shame starts to dissipate, and the numbing effect of the behavior makes it feel like you're in control again. But this is where the problem begins. The relief is temporary, and deep down you know that you're only masking the real issue. Instead of confronting the source of your shame and processing it, you've reinforced the idea that the only way to feel better is through the very behavior that led to the relapse in the first place. Each time you fall into the trap of using a quick fix to escape shame, it gets harder to break the cycle. Why? Because you've conditioned your brain to associate the relief you seek with the very habit that's been holding you back. The shame doesn't just go away. It doesn't get resolved. It's suppressed for a while. But the relief doesn't last, and before you know it, you're right back in the cycle. It's a loop that's hard to escape, and the more you try to avoid the shame, the more it grows. And with it, so does the desire for those old habits. This self-sabotage is powerful because it feels like you're in a constant state of failure. Each time you give in, you feel like you've let yourself down, which only intensifies the shame. And when you feel like you've failed again, it makes sense to go back to the thing that once made you feel better, right? It's a vicious cycle that makes it incredibly difficult to break free. But the real kicker here is that self-sabotage isn't just an external behavior. It's deeply tied to your inner narrative, to the belief that you are inherently flawed. That's why stopping the cycle isn't just about changing your behavior. It's about changing the way you see yourself, about shifting your identity from one that believes in shame to one that believes in growth, redemption, and self-compassion. So how does shame continue to fuel this cycle of self-sabotage? It's all about the way it manipulates your emotions. When you feel shame, you experience a deep emotional reaction. It's almost like being stuck in a fog, where everything feels heavier, where the energy you'd usually put into fighting for your goals is redirected to simply surviving the feeling of being less than. Instead of using your energy to build yourself up, shame drains it. When you're emotionally drained, it's much easier to revert to your old coping mechanisms. In that moment, it feels like relief, but the relief is fleeting. It's like pressing pause on your problems, but they're always waiting for you when the moment of relief ends. But there's a way out of this cycle, if you're willing to do the work of healing the underlying emotional wound. The first step is understanding how shame has been manipulating your thoughts and behaviors all along. When you notice yourself slipping back into old habits, don't just focus on the behavior. Ask yourself, what's driving this? What emotion is leading me to make this choice? The answer will often point back to shame, the belief that you're not worthy, that you've failed, and that this behavior is just a reflection of who you are. Once you begin to recognize the role that shame plays, the next step is learning how to deal with it in a healthy way. Instead of reaching for an old habit, you need to build new emotional tools. The most effective tool for breaking the cycle of self-sabotage is self-compassion. Instead of chastising yourself for slipping up, practice being kind to yourself. When you feel that pull to relapse, pause and ask yourself, what would I say to a friend who is feeling the same way I am right now? More than likely, you'd offer them empathy, understanding, and encouragement. So why not offer that to yourself? Self-compassion isn't about letting yourself off the hook. It's about recognizing that you're human, that mistakes happen, and that they don't define your worth. The more you practice self-compassion, the more you start to shift your internal narrative. You begin to replace the belief that you're flawed with the belief that you are worthy of love, growth, and success. And as your internal narrative shifts, so will your external behaviors. The less shame you carry, the less power it has to drive you back into old habits. Another powerful tool is emotional awareness. Learn to sit with your feelings, even the uncomfortable ones. Shame thrives when we try to escape it. But if you can start to feel the emotion without reacting to it, without turning to a quick fix, you begin to regain control. When you allow yourself to feel and process emotions instead of numbing them, you build emotional resilience. This resilience is your shield against self-sabotage. You don't have to run from your emotions anymore. You can face them and choose a healthier way to move forward. The cycle of self-sabotage won't break overnight. It takes time, effort, and patience. But each time you choose a healthier way to handle your emotions instead of turning back to your old behaviors, you strengthen your ability to resist the urge to relapse. The more you practice self-compassion and emotional awareness, the more you'll shift from a place of shame and self-judgment to a place of growth and acceptance. And with that shift, the cycle of self-sabotage will lose its grip on you. If you've been following along, you now understand how shame is intricately tied to relapse, how it feeds the cycle of self-sabotage, and why it often keeps us stuck in old habits. But here's the thing, even though shame is a powerful driver of relapse, it's not the end of the story. The next crucial part of the journey is realizing that the key to breaking the cycle isn't simply about suppressing shame or wishing it would go away. It's about learning how to process it and shift your emotional landscape so that you don't let it control your decisions. This is where the concept of self-compassion comes into play, and it's perhaps the most transformative tool in your recovery. Self-compassion is often misunderstood. It's easy to think that being kind to yourself is a sign of weakness or indulgence. But nothing could be further from the truth. Self-compassion is not about giving yourself a free pass or excusing unhealthy behaviors. Instead, it's about treating yourself with the same kindness, care, and understanding that you would offer to a close friend who is struggling. It's about recognizing that you, just like anyone else, are worthy of love and acceptance, even when you stumble. When you're trapped in the cycle of shame and relapse, it's easy to fall into a pattern of self-criticism. Every mistake or setback feels like proof that you're incapable, flawed, or unworthy of recovery. You may even tell yourself things like, "I always mess up," or "I'm never going to change." This internal dialogue only reinforces the shame you're trying to escape and makes the cycle of self-sabotage worse. But self-compassion works by breaking this destructive pattern. When you practice self-compassion, you're not excusing your behavior, but you're acknowledging that mistakes are part of the human experience. It allows you to approach yourself with kindness and understanding instead of judgment and blame. Think about it. How would you treat a loved one who's gone through a relapse or setback? Would you tell them they're a failure and that they'll never change? Of course not. You would probably say something like, "Hey, it's okay. You've been through a lot, but you're still on the right path. Let's figure this out together." That's the kind of care and compassion you need to offer yourself in those moments. When you feel the sting of shame, instead of reinforcing it with criticism, you can step back and say, "I've made a mistake, but that doesn't define me. I'm learning, I'm growing, and I can still move forward." One of the most powerful aspects of self-compassion is that it helps you break the cycle of shame. When you start to treat yourself with kindness, the emotional pain that shame causes begins to lose its grip. Instead of acting from a place of self-judgment and fear, you start acting from a place of self-respect and understanding. This shift doesn't happen overnight, but with consistent practice, it gradually replaces the negative self-talk with a more supportive, nurturing internal voice. But self-compassion isn't just about feeling better in the moment. It's also about building resilience. Resilience is the ability to bounce back from setbacks, to keep going even when things don't go according to plan. And the truth is, self-compassion is the foundation of resilience. When you have compassion for yourself, you're more likely to see setbacks as opportunities for growth rather than as evidence that you're a failure. You start to understand that relapse isn't a permanent state, but just a temporary challenge you can overcome. With self-compassion, you begin to see your mistakes as part of the process, not as proof that you're incapable of change. The best part about self-compassion is that it also reduces the power of triggers. When shame is in control, it makes every mistake feel like the end of the world. But when you practice self-compassion, you can face those triggers with a calm, clear mind. Let's say you experience a stressful situation and feel that pull to relapse. Normally, shame would come rushing in, telling you that you're not good enough, that you've failed, and that you might as well give in. But with self-compassion, you can pause, recognize that you're human, and instead of indulging in the old behavior, you can take a moment to breathe and redirect yourself. You'll be less likely to let the moment control you, because you've built a stronger, more resilient foundation. Now, here's where it gets even more important. Practicing self-compassion helps you reframe your relationship with relapse. Instead of seeing it as a moral failing or a sign that you'll never change, you can start viewing it as a part of the process. Everyone has setbacks. The most successful people in recovery have experienced relapses. But what separates those who stay stuck from those who move forward is their ability to use each relapse as a learning experience, rather than a reason to give up. Self-compassion allows you to take a setback in stride, understand what triggered it, and then adjust your approach going forward. The journey to breaking free from relapse is not linear. It's messy. You'll have setbacks, slip-ups, and moments where it feels like you're going in circles. But with self-compassion, you can approach those moments with grace instead of frustration. You can tell yourself, this doesn't define me. I am learning. I am growing. I'm still moving forward. That's the kind of mindset that builds lasting change. Another crucial part of self-compassion is allowing yourself the space to heal. When you're in a cycle of shame and relapse, you often feel like you have to be perfect right away. You may push yourself too hard, expecting immediate results, but self-compassion teaches you to give yourself permission to heal at your own pace. It's about progress, not perfection. Instead of demanding that you change overnight, self-compassion encourages you to celebrate the small wins, the moments where you choose self-care, the times when you resist a trigger, and the progress you've made, even if it's just one step forward. So, how do you start practicing self-compassion? It begins with awareness. The next time you experience shame or feel the pull to relapse, take a moment to pause. Notice the emotion. Acknowledge it without judgment. Then, speak to yourself the way you would speak to a loved one. Offer yourself understanding. Tell yourself it's okay to make mistakes, that you're still on the right path, and that you are worthy of growth. You don't need to be perfect to be deserving of love, healing, or change. As you practice this over time, you'll start to see a shift not just in how you view yourself, but in how you approach recovery. Self-compassion will begin to break the cycle of shame, and over time, it will be the anchor that helps you resist relapse and make lasting changes. You'll begin to feel stronger, more resilient, and more confident in your ability to move forward. In the next section, we'll explore the power of emotional awareness and how recognizing the emotions behind your behavior can further accelerate your journey toward recovery. But for now, remember, self-compassion is your secret weapon. The more you practice it, the more you'll see your patterns shift, and the more you'll understand that you are not your mistakes. You are a work in progress, capable of incredible growth. Keep moving forward, because with self-compassion, you are already on the path to lasting change. In the journey of recovery, understanding and embracing emotional awareness can be the difference between staying stuck in a cycle of relapse and finally breaking free for good. For many people, the most challenging part of recovery isn't necessarily the behaviors themselves, but the emotions that trigger those behaviors. If you don't understand what's really going on beneath the surface, it's almost impossible to make lasting changes. This is where emotional awareness comes in. When you start to pay attention to the emotions driving your actions, you begin to gain control over your choices and ultimately your recovery journey. This section is all about how developing emotional awareness is not only key to stopping relapse, but is the foundation of lasting transformation. Most of us go through life on autopilot, reacting to emotions without really thinking about them. We feel sad, anxious, or angry, and our natural instinct is to either avoid those feelings or respond to them without really considering why we're feeling the way we are. This is particularly dangerous when it comes to relapse. Often we don't even realize that our behaviors are driven by unprocessed emotions. Instead, we try to fix the behavior itself, thinking that the solution lies in willpower or discipline, when in reality, we're avoiding the very emotion that triggered the relapse in the first place. The first step toward emotional awareness is recognizing that emotions are not bad. They're simply signals, they're indicators that something is going on beneath the surface, and rather than running from them, you need to lean in and understand what they're telling you. When you begin to understand that your emotions are powerful cues that can help you make healthier choices, everything changes. Emotions like sadness, anger, loneliness, and even joy all have underlying messages that, when interpreted correctly, can help you navigate life in a way that reduces the risk of relapse. For example, feelings of sadness may be a sign that you need to rest, or process a past experience. Anger might indicate a boundary has been crossed, or that something in your life feels unjust. Loneliness may point to a need for social connection or more meaningful relationships. When you recognize these emotions as signals, you can start to ask yourself, what is this emotion telling me, and how can I respond in a way that aligns with my goals and values? This shifts the focus from avoiding emotions to learning from them. One of the reasons people relapse is that they are trying to avoid or suppress uncomfortable emotions. It's easier to reach for a substance, indulge in a behavior, or fall back on old habits than it is to sit with the discomfort of emotions like shame, fear, or anxiety. But the problem is that avoiding or suppressing emotions doesn't make them go away. In fact, the more you try to avoid them, the stronger and more persistent they become. This is why relapse becomes such a vicious cycle. You experience an emotion that feels too painful, and instead of confronting it or dealing with it in a healthy way, you numb it with a quick fix. The temporary relief feels good, but it doesn't address the root cause of the problem, and the emotion comes back, often even stronger than before. Emotional awareness, on the other hand, teaches you how to deal with emotions in a healthy, productive way. Instead of pushing them away, you learn to lean into them, acknowledge them, and ask what they need. So how do you build emotional awareness? It starts with slowing down and paying attention. The next time you feel a strong emotion, whether it's a craving to relapse or an uncomfortable feeling like anxiety or frustration, take a moment to stop and breathe. Notice where you feel that emotion in your body. Is it tightness in your chest, a sinking feeling in your stomach, tension in your shoulders? Becoming aware of the physical sensations tied to emotions is a powerful tool because it connects you to what's happening in the present moment, rather than letting your emotions run unchecked. Once you notice the emotion, ask yourself, what triggered this? What is this emotion trying to tell me? You might not get all the answers right away, and that's okay. The point is to start a conversation with yourself about what's happening underneath the surface. The next step is to label the emotion. Often, we experience a mix of feelings, and they can be hard to identify. But giving them a name is crucial. Is it sadness, loneliness, anger, fear? Each emotion has a specific message and energy. Anger, for example, might indicate that something isn't right and needs to be changed, while sadness could indicate that you need to process something from the past or give yourself time to heal. By identifying what you're feeling, you move from just being at the mercy of your emotions to taking control of them. This doesn't mean that you immediately push them away or try to get rid of them. Rather, it's about understanding what the emotion is, where it's coming from, and what it's trying to communicate. Once you've identified the emotion, it's time to ask yourself, what do I need right now? This is the most important question to ask. If you feel lonely, do you need connection with someone you trust? If you feel overwhelmed, do you need to take a break or set a boundary with someone? Emotional awareness isn't about ignoring your needs or trying to tough it out. It's about giving yourself permission to feel and respond in a way that is healthy, constructive, and aligned with your recovery goals. For example, if you're feeling anxious about something in your life, rather than immediately seeking relief through old habits, you might decide to journal your feelings, reach out to a friend for support, or take a walk to clear your mind. These responses don't just distract you from the feeling, they help you process it and move through it in a healthy way. Building emotional awareness also involves practicing mindfulness. Mindfulness is about being fully present in the moment, without judgment, and it's an essential skill for emotional awareness. When you practice mindfulness, you start to notice your thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations as they arise, without immediately reacting to them. This gives you the space to decide how you want to respond, rather than automatically falling into old patterns of behavior. You can practice mindfulness through simple breathing exercises, meditation, or even by simply paying attention to your thoughts and feelings throughout the day. The goal is to stay present with yourself and your emotions, rather than pushing them away or allowing them to control you. Another way to build emotional awareness is through self-reflection. After a relapse or when you feel the urge to return to old habits, take some time to reflect on what happened. What emotions were you feeling before you gave in? Were there any warning signs you missed? By looking back and reflecting on your emotional state, you can identify patterns and triggers that can help you anticipate and avoid relapse in the future. Self-reflection isn't about judging yourself for your mistakes. It's about learning from them and using that knowledge to grow and improve. Emotional awareness also requires patience and practice. Emotions are complex, and it can take time to fully understand and process them. There will be moments when you feel overwhelmed, and that's okay. The goal is to keep practicing. The more you become aware of your emotions, the easier it becomes to navigate them without relying on old habits for comfort. Over time, you'll develop greater emotional resilience and self-control, which will make it easier to handle stress, triggers, and difficult emotions without relapsing. At this point, you've learned how emotions like shame are the driving force behind many of your relapses. You've seen how understanding and processing your emotions, particularly through self-compassion and emotional awareness, can help break the cycle of self-sabotage. But there's one more critical element to recovery that ties everything together and gives you the tools you need to stop relapse in its tracks. Emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, EQ, is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage your emotions and the emotions of others. It's not just about having the emotional awareness to identify how you're feeling in any given moment. It's also about using that awareness to guide your thoughts and actions in a way that serves your long-term goals. When it comes to overcoming relapse, emotional intelligence is what helps you move from simply surviving your emotions to thriving in them. It's what allows you to navigate the ups and downs of recovery without being derailed by the emotional triggers that lead to old habits. The role of emotional intelligence in breaking the cycle of relapse can't be overstated. Without it, you're essentially navigating your recovery with a limited set of emotional tools. You may understand what triggers your behavior, but without the ability to manage those emotions effectively, you're left vulnerable to slipping back into your old patterns. Emotional intelligence is what allows you to act with intention instead of reacting impulsively. It gives you the power to pause, reflect, and choose a healthier response when emotional triggers arise. There are 5 key components of emotional intelligence that are particularly helpful when it comes to overcoming relapse: self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. Each one plays a crucial role in helping you understand your emotional landscape and respond in a way that moves you forward on your recovery journey. The first component, self-awareness, is the foundation of emotional intelligence. Self-awareness is the ability to recognize and understand your emotions as they happen, and to notice the patterns in your emotional responses. The more self-aware you are, the easier it is to catch yourself in the act of slipping into old habits. When you're aware of how you're feeling in the moment, you can begin to recognize when you're about to fall into a cycle of self-sabotage. For example, if you're feeling overwhelmed, frustrated, or anxious, that's your signal that a relapse may be on the horizon. Self-awareness doesn't just help you identify your feelings, it helps you understand why you're feeling them, which gives you the opportunity to address the underlying cause rather than letting the emotion control you. The more self-aware you are, the easier it becomes to choose a healthy response rather than turning to a quick fix. Self-regulation, the second component of emotional intelligence, is all about managing your emotions so they don't control you. It's one thing to be aware of your emotions, but it's another to be able to stay calm and in control when those emotions are intense. In the context of relapse, self-regulation helps you prevent emotional overload from triggering old habits. When you feel the urge to relapse, self-regulation allows you to pause and choose a different path. It's about developing the ability to sit with uncomfortable emotions without letting them dictate your actions. Self-regulation doesn't mean suppressing your feelings or ignoring them. It means learning how to ride out the emotional waves without giving in to the impulse to act on them. By practicing self-regulation, you build emotional resilience and increase your capacity to handle stress, triggers, and challenges without reverting to unhealthy coping mechanisms. The third component, motivation, is the driving force behind everything you do. In the context of recovery, motivation is what helps you stay focused on your long-term goals, even when the immediate temptations of relapse seem overwhelming. Motivation in emotional intelligence is about connecting to your deeper purpose and reminding yourself why you're doing the work of recovery in the first place. It's about staying motivated by the bigger picture, even when day-to-day challenges make you want to give up. When you have strong internal motivation, you're more likely to stay committed to your recovery process, even when things get tough. Motivation helps you tap into your inner drive, push through the difficult moments, and stay focused on the healthier long-term outcomes of your recovery journey. Empathy, the fourth component, is your ability to understand and share the feelings of others. While this might seem like it's more relevant to your relationships with other people, it also plays a crucial role in your own emotional journey. Empathy helps you understand your own emotions by making you more in tune with how you're feeling and why you're feeling that way. By practicing empathy with yourself, you're able to acknowledge your own struggles without judgment. This understanding allows you to approach yourself with kindness, which, as we've discussed earlier, is crucial for breaking the cycle of shame. Empathy also helps you see things from other people's perspectives, which is important if you're relying on others for support in your recovery. When you develop empathy, you become more attuned to your own emotional needs, as well as the emotional needs of others, which can help you build stronger, more supportive relationships on your journey. The final component of emotional intelligence is social skills, which are essential for building and maintaining strong, supportive relationships. As much as recovery is an individual journey, it's also about connection. Social skills and emotional intelligence help you communicate effectively, manage conflicts, and build a support network that will help you stay on track. When you're going through recovery, having a strong social support system is critical. Social skills help you navigate relationships, whether it's asking for help, setting boundaries, or reaching out to someone when you need support. The better you are at understanding and managing relationships, the more likely you are to build a solid support network that encourages and empowers you to stay on the path to recovery. The key to using emotional intelligence to overcome relapse is to recognize that emotions are not enemies, they're guides. When you have emotional intelligence, you're not at the mercy of your emotions. Instead, you're in control of them. You're able to identify what's driving your actions, understand why you're feeling the way you are, and make conscious, intentional decisions that align with your long-term goals. Emotional intelligence helps you break the cycle of relapse by teaching you how to respond to your emotions in a way that supports your recovery rather than undermining it. Here's the thing about emotional intelligence. It's a skill that can be learned and developed over time. Just like any other skill, it requires practice, patience, and dedication. But the rewards are worth it. When you develop emotional intelligence, you stop reacting to your emotions impulsively. You stop letting your feelings dictate your behavior. Instead, you learn how to navigate them with intention, clarity, and resilience. Emotional intelligence is the secret weapon that allows you to rise above the triggers, the cravings, and the emotional pain that used to lead to relapse. It's what helps you stay grounded and focused, no matter what life throws at you. As we come to the end of this journey together, let's take a step back and reflect on everything we've covered. If you've been following along, you now have a deeper understanding of why relapse happens, and more importantly, why it's not about lack of willpower or an inability to succeed. At the heart of relapse is an emotion, one that many of us don't even recognize or fully understand: shame. Shame is the silent force driving many of our decisions, including the decision to return to old habits, to self-sabotage, and to believe that we are not worthy of success, happiness, or healing. But the good news is, we don't have to stay stuck in this cycle of self-sabotage. We've explored how emotional awareness, self-compassion, and emotional intelligence are the keys to breaking free from relapse. These tools give us the power to finally step out of the shadows of shame and into a place of growth, healing, and long-term success. Emotional intelligence, in particular, allows us to become masters of our own emotional landscape. It empowers us to understand why we feel what we feel, to manage those emotions effectively, and to use them to our advantage rather than letting them control us. We've learned that self-awareness is the first step toward emotional freedom. The more aware you are of your emotions, especially those difficult ones like shame, guilt, fear, and sadness, the more control you have over your behavior. Self-awareness helps you recognize when you're about to slip into old habits and gives you the opportunity to choose a healthier response. Instead of mindlessly reacting to emotional triggers, you can stop, reflect, and make a conscious decision about how you want to respond. This is the first step in taking back your power and breaking the cycle of relapse. Self-regulation, the next critical component of emotional intelligence, is what allows you to stay in control when emotions run high. Emotions can be overwhelming, especially when they're tied to deep-rooted beliefs like shame. But when you practice self-regulation, you can ride out those emotional waves without being swept away by them. Self-regulation gives you the space to pause before acting, to check in with yourself, and to choose a response that aligns with your long-term recovery goals. It allows you to stay calm under pressure and prevents you from acting impulsively when faced with triggers or setbacks. Motivation, the third pillar of emotional intelligence, is what keeps you moving forward. When you're motivated by a deeper purpose, whether it's your desire for a healthier, happier life, your love for your family, or your commitment to your own well-being, you can stay focused on the bigger picture. Motivation helps you persevere through the tough times, to keep going even when relapse seems like an easy option. It taps into your internal drive and helps you push through when things feel hard. When motivation is fueled by emotional intelligence, it becomes a sustainable source of strength that propels you toward your recovery goals, even in the face of challenges. Empathy, which is often thought of as a way to relate to others, is also a powerful tool for self-healing. By practicing empathy toward yourself, you can start to break down the walls of shame and self-judgment. Instead of criticizing yourself for mistakes or setbacks, you learn to be kind, understanding, and compassionate. Empathy allows you to see yourself as a person worthy of love and growth, not as a failure or someone who doesn't deserve to heal. This shift in perspective is crucial for long-term recovery because it helps you stop beating yourself up every time you slip up. Instead, you can approach your challenges with an open heart and a willingness to learn, grow, and move forward. And finally, the importance of social skills in recovery cannot be overstated. While recovery is a deeply personal journey, it's also one that requires support. Having strong social skills means you're able to reach out for help when you need it, set healthy boundaries, and communicate your feelings effectively. It means you can build and nurture relationships that support your growth, whether it's with family, friends, support groups, or a therapist. The better you are at managing relationships, the more likely you are to have a strong support system that will help you stay on track. Social skills are essential for building the kind of network that encourages your recovery, challenges you to stay accountable, and offers a safe space for you to express your emotions without judgment. As we wrap up this conversation, it's important to remember that breaking the cycle of relapse is not a one-time event. It's a process. It's a journey that takes time, effort, and yes, setbacks. But those setbacks don't define you. They are simply part of the process. Each time you face a challenge, each time you feel the pull of an old habit, you have an opportunity to practice emotional intelligence, to reflect on what's really going on, and to choose a response that aligns with the person you're becoming. This is how you break free from relapse, not by trying harder but by becoming more aware, more compassionate, and more emotionally intelligent. Now let's talk about what comes next. Armed with the knowledge of how shame, emotional awareness, self-compassion, and emotional intelligence are all connected, you're in a position to take real, meaningful action. Start by practicing the skills we've discussed. Begin by noticing your emotions, labeling them, and reflecting on what they're trying to tell you. Practice self-compassion, especially in moments of difficulty or relapse. Be kind to yourself when you make mistakes, and use those moments as learning experiences, rather than reasons to give up. Focus on building emotional intelligence. Pay attention to your emotional triggers, and learn how to regulate your responses. And finally, surround yourself with supportive people who can help you on your journey, whether it's through a support group, therapy, or simply opening up to a close friend or family member. The road to recovery is never easy, but it is so much more achievable when you have the right tools and mindset in place. You don't have to face this journey alone, and you don't have to be perfect to make progress. You just need to keep moving forward, one step at a time. And remember, every moment you choose a healthier response to your emotions, you're moving closer to the person you want to be, someone who is emotionally intelligent, resilient, and empowered to create lasting change. So take a deep breath, embrace the process, and trust that you are capable of healing and thriving. You have everything you need within you to overcome relapse. And the best part is, you're already on the path to success. Thank you for joining me today and taking the time to explore how you can break free from relapse once and for all. I hope these insights have inspired you to look at your recovery journey through a new lens, one that is filled with self-compassion, emotional awareness, and emotional intelligence. Keep going, stay committed, and always remember that you are worthy of healing, growth, and a life free from the cycle of relapse. Keep moving forward. Your future self will thank you.